Her billionaire husband lied about a business trip. She found the hotel receipt. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The first lie in a marriage rarely sounds like betrayal. Sometimes it sounds like a flight number, a tired voice, and the words, "I wish I could be home tonight." Naomi Brooks stood in the golden quiet of the Whitmore penthouse, one hand resting on the back of a dining chair, the other holding her phone against her ear as the candles she had lit for their 6th wedding anniversary trembled in the soft air from the vents. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan glittered like a city made of promises, every tower wearing its own crown of light, every avenue flowing with yellow cabs and Friday night dreams. On the table sat Grant's favorite dinner, rosemary chicken, roasted asparagus, and a bottle of California Cabernet she had saved for this exact evening. Her red dress, the one he once said made her look unforgettable, moved like quiet fire around her knees. "Denver?" she asked softly, not because she doubted him, but because disappointment needed one small place to land. Grant Whitmore sighed on the other end, polished and exhausted in the way powerful men learned to sound when they wanted sympathy without questions. "Board emergency. The investors are nervous. I hate this, Naomi. I'll make it up to you." She closed her eyes and pictured him in some airport lounge, white shirt sleeves rolled up, laptop open, that focused crease between his brows. Her husband, the billionaire hotel developer the magazines called visionary, the man who could command a room with a glance and make donors empty their wallets for a cause with a single speech. To the world, Grant and Naomi were proof that love could cross status, race, and expectation. He was the white billionaire who had married a black woman. From Brooklyn, with a voice gentle enough to calm a room and a spine strong enough to carry one. She had helped build his foundation from a glossy, tax-friendly idea into something real, something that paid rent for single mothers, funded college applications, and kept food pantries open after the cameras left. "Do what you have to do," she said, because that was what love had taught her. Patience, grace, room for another person's burdens. Just be safe. After the call ended, the penthouse became too quiet. Naomi blew out the candles one by one, watching the smoke curl upward like tiny gray questions. She folded her napkin, covered the dinner, and carried the untouched anniversary card back to her bedroom. Its message felt almost too innocent now, to 6 years of choosing each other. By morning, sunlight spilled across Grant's dressing room in pale ribbons. Naomi was returning his charcoal suit jacket to the closet when something slipped from the inner pocket and landed near her bare foot. A receipt. Heavy cream paper. The kind used by luxury hotels that believed even proof should feel expensive. Naomi bent down and picked it up. At first, her mind refused to understand what her eyes were reading. The Whitmore Grand Hotel. Presidential Suite. Check-in, 7:42 p.m. Manhattan, New York. Not Denver. Not a board emergency. Not even 10 miles from where she had spent the night alone, defending his absence to her own breaking heart. Her thumb brushed the signature at the bottom. Grant A. Whitmore. For a long moment, Naomi did not cry. She did not scream. She simply stood there in the clean morning light, still wearing her wedding ring, still breathing in the familiar scent of his cedarwood cologne, while the city below continued moving as if nothing sacred had just cracked. Then she took a photo of the receipt, placed it exactly where she had found it, and closed the closet door with the careful silence of a woman who had just realized the truth was no longer hiding from her. It was waiting to see what she would do next. Naomi returned to the kitchen with the kind of calm that did not feel natural, the kind a person wears when the heart has stepped back from the body to protect itself. The penthouse still smelled faintly of rosemary, wax, and the white lilies Grant had sent before he told her he would not be coming home. She moved through the room slowly, touching nothing she did not need to touch, as if the truth had turned the apartment into a museum of things she had once believed. The receipt was no longer in her hand, but she could still feel its weight, its smooth, expensive paper, its cruel little numbers arranged with perfect businesslike honesty. At 8:15 a.m., Grant called. Naomi looked at his name glowing across her phone and let it ring 3 times before answering. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady enough to surprise her. "Morning, beautiful," he replied, warm and easy, the same voice that had once made her feel chosen in crowded rooms. "I just landed. I am exhausted. Denver was a mess." Naomi stood by the window, watching a delivery truck crawl along Madison Avenue below. "I can imagine." The meeting ran late. Then the car service was delayed. "I barely slept." Each sentence arrived polished, rehearsed, wrapped in the confidence of a man who did not expect to be questioned. Naomi listened with her free hand resting against the cool glass. For 6 years, she had trusted that voice. She had trusted it through bored dinners where strangers stared too long at her skin before praising her elegance, through charity luncheons where wealthy women called her inspiring when they meant unexpected, through magazine interviews where Grant smiled and said Naomi made him a better man. She had believed him because love, when it is honest, teaches the soul to relax. Now every word he spoke made something inside her sit upright. "You should rest when you get home," she said. "I will. I picked up flowers for you at the airport." The lie was so small beside the others that it almost made her sad. "That is thoughtful." By noon, Grant walked into the penthouse carrying a bouquet of white roses wrapped in silver paper. His charcoal coat was draped over one arm, his jaw clean-shaven, his smile soft with practiced regret. He crossed the room and kissed Naomi on the forehead, the gesture familiar enough to hurt. "I am sorry about last night," he said. "You deserved better." She looked up at him, searching his face not for guilt, but for the man she remembered. "Did you eat?" she asked. "Barely. Airport food." He set the flowers on the counter and loosened his tie. That was when Naomi saw it, faint but undeniable, a pale rose-colored mark near the inside edge of his collar, almost hidden beneath the fold of white cotton. Her breath did not change. Her hands did not shake. She simply reached for a vase beneath the sink and filled it with water. "The roses are beautiful," she said. Grant smiled, relieved by the simplicity of forgiveness he had not earned. "I knew you would like them." Naomi trimmed each stem with slow precision, letting the clipped ends fall neatly into the sink. Her mother, Evelyn Brooks, had once told her that dignity was not silence, and silence was not surrender. At the time, Naomi had been too young to understand the difference. Now she did. Silence could be a locked door. Silence could be a mirror. Silence could be the moment before a woman decided whether the life she had built was still safe enough to stand inside. Grant stepped behind her and placed his hands lightly on her shoulders. "I missed you," he said. In the polished steel of the kitchen window, Naomi saw their reflection, his tall frame behind hers, his white shirt bright against her deep brown skin, the flowers between them like an apology arranged for display. She smiled just enough for him to believe it. Then her eyes drifted to the collar again, and the room seemed to lose 1 degree of warmth. "I missed the truth," she whispered, so quietly that Grant did not hear her. But Naomi heard it, and for the first time since she found the receipt, the pain inside her began to harden into purpose. Over the next 48 hours, Naomi learned that betrayal was rarely a single moment. It was a pattern hiding in plain sight, waiting for the wounded person to become brave enough to look back. She did not search Grant's phone. She did not follow his car. She did not become someone she would later be ashamed to recognize. Instead, she opened her own calendar, her own emails, her own memories, and began arranging them like quiet evidence on a table only she could see. There had been the Thursday dinner he missed because of a sudden investor call in Chicago. Though his cuff links had returned in the pocket of a tuxedo he only wore to private events in New York. There had been the Sunday brunch with donors where Claire Donovan arrived wearing the same rare French perfume Naomi had smelled in Grant's car 2 nights earlier. There had been the board retreat in Aspen that ended 1 day early for everyone except Grant, who claimed the chairman needed him to stay behind. Naomi remembered Claire at that retreat, her blonde hair swept into a perfect knot, her smile smooth as glass whenever she addressed Naomi as if kindness were a professional skill. Claire was Grant's communications director, the woman who shaped his public image, softened his mistakes, and fed the press the version of him they wanted to print. Naomi had defended her once, after an older trustee dismissed Claire as ambitious in a tone that made ambition sound like a crime. A woman should not be punished for knowing her value, Naomi had said then. The memory stung now, not because Naomi regretted the principle, but because she had offered grace to someone who may have mistaken it for blindness. On Monday morning, while Grant took a private call in his study, Naomi sat in the foundation office downstairs with her laptop open and her face composed. She was reviewing scholarship applications when an automated receipt appeared in the shared charity inbox, misdirected from the hospitality division of Whitmore Group. The subject line was ordinary enough to be ignored: VIP donor suite reconciliation. Naomi opened it because she had spent years making sure every dollar connected to her name had a clean paper trail. The attachment loaded slowly. Then the screen filled with dates, room codes, internal notes, and a repeated name: Claire Donovan. Suite 4100. Suite 4100. Suite 4100. The same suite from Grant's receipt. The same property in Manhattan. The same nights Grant had been in Denver, Chicago, Aspen, or wherever a lie sounded more respectable than the truth. Naomi leaned back in her chair as the city hummed beyond the window. For a moment, pain rose in her throat, sharp and hot, but she swallowed it down with a breath she could control. This was no longer suspicion. This was arithmetic. When Grant entered the office an hour later, he found her signing thank you letters to donors, her posture straight, her expression peaceful. "Busy morning?" he asked. "Very," she said, placing one completed letter onto a neat stack. "The foundation has more records than I realized." He smiled without understanding the edge beneath her words. "That is why I trust you with it." Naomi looked at the gold wedding band on her finger. She slipped it halfway off, just enough to feel the cooler skin beneath, then pushed it back into place before he noticed. Trust, she was beginning to understand, was not proven by what people said when the room was full. It was proven by what they protected when they thought no one was watching. That evening, Grant left his iPad on the kitchen island while he took a shower. Naomi was setting a glass of water beside it when the screen lit with a message preview from Claire. "Same suite tonight. She still believes you." The words sat there beneath the soft kitchen lights, small and devastating. Naomi did not touch the device. She did not need to. She had already seen enough. She turned away, placed the water glass exactly where she had intended, and walked toward the bedroom with the quiet grace of a woman who was no longer waiting for the truth to confess. She was preparing to make it stand in the light. By Wednesday afternoon, Naomi understood that the gala was not simply another evening of polished smiles and donor applause. It was a stage, and Grant had built it carefully enough to make every lie look like leadership. The Whitmore Foundation's annual benefit would take place Saturday night in the Grand Ballroom of the Whitmore Grand Hotel, the same hotel where Suite 4100 had become a private language between her husband and the woman paid to protect his reputation. Outside, spring rain traced silver lines down the penthouse windows, blurring Manhattan into watercolor towers, while Naomi sat at her desk reviewing the press schedule Claire had emailed that morning. There would be photographers at the entrance, a tribute video, a scholarship announcement, and a joint interview where Grant planned to speak about family, sacrifice, and the woman who kept him grounded. Naomi read that phrase 3 times. The woman who kept him grounded. A strange calm settled over her, colder than anger and cleaner than grief. He did not want a wife that night. He wanted a symbol. He wanted her deep brown hand folded around his white one beneath the lights, proof for the cameras that his home was honorable, his foundation pure, his public image untouched. Naomi closed the laptop and looked across the room at the framed photograph from their wedding day. She had been smiling beneath a canopy of white orchids, believing love was not perfect, but honest enough to grow. Now she knew honesty was not an accessory to marriage. It was the floor. Without it, everything beautiful eventually collapsed. That evening, while Grant was at a private dinner with 2 trustees, Naomi took a cab to a quiet law office on West 44th Street. Marcus Reed met her in a conference room lined with books and old city maps, his navy suit modest, his expression careful. They had known each other since college, back when Naomi worked 2 campus jobs and Marcus carried casebooks with colored tabs sticking out like warning flags. He did not ask why she had come after business hours. He simply placed a yellow legal pad on the table and said, "Tell me what you know, and tell me only what you can prove." Naomi appreciated that. Sympathy might have broken her. Structure held her together. She laid out copies of the receipt, the misdirected suite reconciliation, screenshots of dates, foundation documents, and the message preview she had written down from memory. Marcus listened without interruption, his pen moving steadily. When she finished, he leaned back and folded his hands. Naomi, this is not just about infidelity. If your name is attached to transactions you did not authorize, you need protection before this becomes public. The sentence entered her like a bell. Clear. Necessary. Unforgiving. I never signed anything false, she said. Then we make sure the record says that before anyone tries to say otherwise. On the ride home, Naomi watched families pass under umbrellas, strangers holding doors for one another, a father lifting his little girl over a puddle as if kindness were still a natural thing in the world. She thought about the women who came to the foundation after divorce, eviction, medical debt, and quiet humiliation, women who apologized for needing help because someone had taught them survival was shameful. Naomi had told them again and again that asking for protection was not weakness. Now she had to believe it for herself. When she returned to the penthouse, Grant was not home yet. A cream envelope waited beneath the door, unmarked, no stamp, no return address. For a moment, Naomi only stared at it. Then she picked it up, carried it to the dining table, and opened it with a silver letter knife. Inside were 3 photographs. Grant and Claire leaving the Whitmore Grand through a private side entrance. Grant's hand at the small of Claire's back. Claire looking up at him with the intimate ease of someone who did not fear being seen. Naomi sat down slowly. The chandelier above her scattered light across the polished table, turning the photographs glossy and sharp. She did not know who had sent them. She did not know whether it was warning, pity, or strategy. But she knew one thing with a certainty that steadied her bones. Saturday night would not belong to Grant Whitmore's version of the truth. It would belong to the truth itself. Grant came home just after 10, carrying the scent of rain, expensive wool, and a restaurant he had not mentioned. Naomi was waiting in the dining room, not in anger, not in tears, but in a stillness so complete it changed the air before he even removed his coat. The chandelier above the table burned softly, spreading warm light over 3 photographs, 1 hotel receipt, and a neat folder of printed records from the foundation. Grant stopped at the doorway. For a second, the billionaire who could negotiate towers, silence critics, and turn doubt into applause looked like a man who had walked into a room where every exit had disappeared. Naomi, he said carefully, what is this? She sat with her hands folded in front of her, her wedding ring catching a thin blade of light. The truth, I think. But I wanted to give you the chance to name it yourself. His eyes moved from the receipt to the photographs, then to the folder. He loosened his tie, buying time with emotion she knew too well. You are misunderstanding something. Naomi almost admired the reflex. Denial came to him as naturally as breathing. Then help me understand. Were you in Denver on our anniversary? Grant looked toward the windows, where Manhattan glittered beyond the glass, indifferent and alive. The board situation was complicated. That is not an answer. He exhaled, his jaw tightening. I had meetings in the city. Private meetings. I did not want to worry you. Naomi nodded once, as if he had confirmed a weather report. And Suite 4100? The name of the room landed between them with quiet force. Grant's expression shifted, not enough for strangers to notice, but enough for a wife who had loved him through 6 years of mornings, headaches, speeches, and silences. Claire handles many internal bookings. Do not make her your assistant in this lie, Naomi said, her voice low, not sharp, but final. I saw the records. I saw the message. I have the photographs. Grant's control thinned. Who sent you those? That is the first honest thing you have asked tonight, and it is still the wrong question. He stepped closer to the table, anger rising beneath his polished surface, not loud, but defensive. You do not understand the pressure I am under. Every decision, every headline, every donor, every investor, every person waiting for me to fail. Do you think that is easy? Naomi looked at the man she had once prayed beside before his biggest presentations. No, but pressure does not make betrayal honorable. He flinched, then recovered with the pride that had built his empire and weakened his soul. I made mistakes. That does not mean you get to judge everything I have done. I am not judging everything, she said. I am judging this. She opened the folder and turned 1 page toward him. His face changed. Not fear exactly. Recognition. The kind that comes when a hidden door is found. Why is my name attached to foundation transfers I never approved? Grant did not answer. The room seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere beyond the walls, an elevator chimed softly, carrying other people to other lives. Naomi waited. She had learned that silence, used correctly, could make a lie grow too heavy to carry. It was temporary, he said at last. A restructuring issue. The auditors were asking questions, and your signature as foundation chair kept things stable. I was going to fix it. Naomi stared at him, and for the first time that night, sadness nearly broke through her composure. Not because he had betrayed their marriage. She had already begun surviving that. But because he had used her goodness as cover, her reputation as shelter, her trust as paperwork. You put my name on something I did not approve. I protected the foundation. You protected yourself. The words were quiet, but they struck deeper than shouting ever could. Grant pulled out a chair and sat down, suddenly older beneath the golden light. I did not think it would come to this. Naomi stood, gathering the photographs, but leaving the receipt on the table between them. Did you lie because you were afraid to lose me? Or because you were sure I would stay? His silence answered before his mouth could. Naomi slipped off her wedding ring and placed it beside the receipt. The sound was small, almost gentle, but it changed the shape of the room. I loved you with clean hands, Grant. Do not mistake that for empty ones. Then she walked past him toward the bedroom, not to collapse, not to beg, but to pack what belonged to the woman she still was. The suitcase Naomi carried out of the penthouse was not large. It held 3 dresses, 2 pairs of shoes, a folder of documents, her mother's old silver bracelet, and the kind of heartbreak that could not be folded neatly into anything. Grant stood in the hallway as she passed, his shirt sleeves rolled to his forearms, his face pale beneath the soft recessed lights. Naomi, do not leave like this, he said, and for a moment his voice had no empire in it, no money, no power, only fear. She paused near the elevator but did not turn around. There was a time when those words would have brought me back. The doors opened with a quiet chime. Grant took 1 step forward. Where will you go? Naomi looked at him then, really looked at him, at the man who had once made her laugh in a crowded grocery store because he could not tell cilantro from parsley, the man who had held her hand through her father's memorial service, the man who had somehow become both memory and stranger. Somewhere my name is still safe, she said. The elevator doors closed before he could answer. Outside, New York rain fell in silver sheets, washing the sidewalks clean beneath the streetlights. Naomi refused the town car waiting at the curb and raised her hand for a yellow cab instead. The driver did not recognize her. He did not ask why a woman in a silk blouse was leaving one of Manhattan's most expensive buildings with a single suitcase near midnight. He simply asked for an address. Brooklyn, she said. Bedford-Stuyvesant. The city changed slowly through the wet glass, from towers to bridges, from polished lobbies to corner stores with flickering signs, from the life Grant had built around her to the life that had built her first. By the time the cab stopped in front of Evelyn Brooks's brownstone, Naomi had not cried once. Her mother opened the door in a robe and slippers, silver hair wrapped in a scarf, eyes already knowing before Naomi spoke. Mothers heard certain kinds of pain before words arrived. Come in, baby, Evelyn said. That was all. No questions in the doorway. No panic. No shame. Just warmth, lamplight, and the smell of chamomile tea. Inside the narrow kitchen, Naomi finally set the suitcase down. Her strength did not disappear. It simply sat beside her, tired. Evelyn poured tea into 2 chipped mugs, the same mugs Naomi remembered from high school mornings when money was tight, but the house was full of music. He lied, Naomi said, and he used my name. Evelyn's face tightened, but her voice stayed gentle. Then we protect your name before we mourn the marriage. The sentence settled over Naomi like a blanket and a command. She looked at her mother's hands, brown and lined from years of nursing. Shifts, church bake sales, and holding families together when life got expensive. Those hands had taught Naomi that dignity was not something rich people gave you. It was something no one could take unless you surrendered it. I feel foolish, Naomi whispered. Evelyn reached across the table and covered her daughter's hand. No, you loved honestly. That is not foolish. That is brave. But now you must be brave in a different direction. By morning, Naomi had called Marcus Reed, changed passwords, secured copies of her personal records, and prepared a written statement separating herself from any unauthorized foundation activity. She did not post vague messages online. She did not call reporters. She did not turn pain into theater. She turned it into order. Over the next 3 months, she lived in the small upstairs room she had once painted lavender at 16. She slept poorly, worked steadily, and learned how grief could visit without becoming the owner of the house. Marcus filed the necessary protections. An independent accountant reviewed the foundation documents. Naomi resigned from the Whitmore Foundation with one clear sentence that traveled farther than she expected. I will not allow my name to decorate a system I cannot ethically defend. Women began writing to her. Quiet messages, long emails, stories of bank accounts emptied, signatures forged, apologies demanded from those who had done nothing wrong. Naomi read every one. Then one rainy afternoon, sitting at her mother's kitchen table with a legal pad and a cooling cup of coffee, she wrote a new name at the top of the page: the Brooks Center for Financial Dignity. It would not be revenge. It would be shelter. It would teach women how to read contracts, protect credit, ask the right questions, and leave with their self-respect intact when staying became too expensive for the soul. Evelyn looked at the page and smiled. Now that, she said, is how clean hands build something powerful. Naomi touched the place where her wedding ring used to rest. The skin was still lighter there, a pale circle of absence. But absence, she was learning, was not emptiness. Sometimes it was space. And for the first time, since the receipt fell at her feet, Naomi could imagine filling that space with something that belonged only to her. 3 months later, the Whitmore Grand Hotel wore its elegance like a mask. Crystal chandeliers spilled light across the marble floors. Violin music floated above the soft rhythm of expensive shoes, and hundreds of guests moved through the ballroom with champagne glasses in their hands and practiced sympathy on their faces. It was the annual Civic Trust Forum, an event once dominated by Grant Whitmore's name, his donations, his speeches, his talent for making generosity look effortless. But this year, the invitation had not placed him at the center. This year, the keynote speaker was Naomi Brooks, founder of the Brooks Center for Financial Dignity, the woman many people in that room had once known only as Grant Whitmore's wife. Grant stood near the back beside a column of white roses, his black tuxedo flawless, his expression controlled, but the control no longer reached his eyes. Claire Donovan was nowhere near him. After the internal review began, her resignation had been described in polite corporate language, the kind that revealed nothing and confirmed everything. Reporters had tried for weeks to turn Naomi's silence into scandal, but she had given them no spectacle. She spoke only through documents, through legal statements, through the work. That had made her harder to dismiss. Pain could be mocked. Discipline could not. Near the entrance, a quiet shift passed through the crowd. Conversations softened, then thinned. Naomi had arrived. She stepped into the ballroom wearing a red dress the color of a steady flame, tailored with clean lines and no need for excess. Her natural curls framed her face in soft waves, and her deep brown skin glowed beneath the chandelier light with a calm that no camera could manufacture. She wore no wedding ring. On her wrist was Evelyn's silver bracelet, polished but old, a reminder that strength did not have to be new to be powerful. The room watched her the way people watch someone they underestimated return without asking permission. Naomi greeted donors, advocates, attorneys, and former scholarship students with the same measured warmth. She did not search for Grant, but she felt the room remembering him. She felt the hotel walls remembering Suite 4100. She felt the old life pressing at the edges of the new one, asking whether she would tremble. She did not. When her name was announced, applause rose slowly, then fully, until it filled the ballroom. Naomi walked to the podium and placed her notes down, though she barely needed them. For a moment, she looked out across the crowd. She saw women in designer gowns, hotel staff standing near the side doors, young interns holding clipboards, men who controlled money, women who had survived men who controlled money, and Grant, still as a shadow near the back. Trust, Naomi began, her voice clear, is not a decoration for public life. It is the foundation beneath it. The room became very still. Many of us are taught to recognize generosity when it arrives with cameras, speeches, and large checks. But real generosity is quieter. It is honest bookkeeping. It is a contract explained in plain English. It is a signature never used without permission. It is making sure the person with less power still has the right to understand what is being done in their name. A few people lowered their eyes. Others sat straighter. Naomi continued, not as a wounded wife, but as a woman who had turned the wound into a doorway for others. She spoke about financial literacy, legal access, emergency housing, credit protection, and the dangerous way shame keeps good people silent. She never mentioned Grant. She never mentioned Claire. She did not need to. Every honest sentence carried its own witness. A lie does not only break a heart, she said near the end. Sometimes it breaks a person's confidence in their own judgment. That is why healing must include education. We do not help people by telling them to be stronger. We help them by giving them tools, language, records, advocates, and the dignity of being believed. The applause came before she finished, but Naomi lifted one hand gently, asking the room to let the message land. The Brooks Center exists because no one should have to choose between survival and self-respect. Not in marriage, not in business, not in any room where their name is being used while their voice is being ignored. When she stepped away from the podium, the ballroom rose to its feet. The sound rolled over the marble, up to the chandeliers, and back down like rain finally released from a heavy sky. Grant did not clap at first. He simply stared at her, and in his face Naomi saw the first honest thing he had given her in months, the knowledge that she had not returned to destroy him. She had returned to outgrow him. Then a reporter near the front called her name, careful but loud enough for the microphones to catch. "Mrs. Whitmore, is it true your husband used your name to protect his foundation?" The applause faded into a charged silence. Naomi turned back toward the room, her red dress still as flame, her hand resting lightly on her mother's bracelet. And for the first time, she allowed the public version of the story to meet the truth. The question hung in the ballroom with the precision of a struck bell. Cameras shifted. Microphones lifted. Faces turned from Naomi to Grant and back again, hungry for collapse, waiting for anger, waiting for the kind of pain that could be clipped, captioned, and sold before midnight. Naomi stood at the edge of the stage, her red dress steady beneath the chandelier light, and understood how easily a woman's truth could be reshaped if she handed it over in pieces. So she did not hand them a wound. She handed them a boundary. "My legal name is Naomi Brooks," she said, calm enough that the correction carried farther than any accusation. "And yes, my name was attached to foundation activity I did not authorize." A current moved through the room. Grant closed his eyes for half a second, as if the words had found the place he had been protecting. Naomi continued, her voice even, her hands relaxed at her sides. "I trusted the wrong person with access to my life, my work, and my reputation. That is a painful thing to admit in public, but I will not let embarrassment become silence, and I will not allow my name to be used in any way that could harm the people I promised to help." Marcus Reed stepped forward from the side of the ballroom and handed a prepared statement to the event chair, who passed it to the press pool. No drama, no shouting, just paper, dates, signatures, and facts arranged in the clean language of accountability. Naomi watched the first row of reporters begin reading. Their expressions changed from curiosity to focus. The story was no longer a rumor about a marriage. It was a record of responsibility. "An independent review is already underway," Naomi said. "I have cooperated fully, and I will continue to do so. I also want to be clear that the purpose of tonight is not humiliation. Humiliation does not rebuild trust. Truth does." She turned then, not toward the cameras, but toward the staff members standing near the ballroom doors, the young interns by the registration table, the scholarship recipients who had come to celebrate a future bigger than someone else's scandal. The people served by charitable work are not props for powerful people. Their rent, their tuition, their groceries, their medical appointments, their safety, those things are real. They deserve systems that are honest, not beautiful speeches covering private disorder. Grant moved at last, stepping away from the column. The room parted for him, not out of admiration this time, but uncertainty. His face was pale beneath the warm lights. "Naomi," he said, and the single word carried apology, warning, and grief all at once. She looked at him without hatred. That was what seemed to undo him most. "Grant," she said softly, "this is not the place for private regret." The sentence ended whatever power he thought the moment still owed him. By the next morning, The Whitmore Foundation announced a temporary suspension of its executive operations. By noon, the board confirmed an internal audit. By evening, Claire Donovan's resignation became public, wrapped in polished language but understood by everyone who knew how powerful rooms protected themselves until documents made protection inconvenient. Grant released a statement accepting responsibility for unauthorized administrative decisions and stepping back from foundation leadership. It was not enough to repair what had been broken, but it was the first time his public words did not ask Naomi to carry part of his burden. 3 nights later, he came to the Brooks Brownstone in Brooklyn, not in a town car with tinted windows, but alone, standing beneath the porch light with his coat collar turned up against the wind. Evelyn answered the door first. She looked at him for a long moment, then called upstairs, "Naomi, he is here." Naomi came down wearing jeans, a cream sweater, and no armor but peace. Grant held a small velvet box in his hand. Her wedding ring. "I thought returning this would mean something," he said. "I thought maybe if I admitted everything, if I made it right publicly, if I helped repair the damage, there might still be a way back." Naomi accepted the box, but did not open it. "Making things right is not a bridge back to me. It is a road back to yourself." His eyes filled, but he did not reach for her. Perhaps he had finally learned that remorse was not permission. "Do you hate me?" he asked. Naomi looked past him to the quiet street, to the stoops and trees and porch lights of the neighborhood that had taught her the difference between wealth and worth. "No," she said. "Hate would keep me married to the pain. I am letting both go." Grant nodded slowly, the kind of nod that belonged to a man receiving a truth he could not negotiate. Naomi placed the velvet box back into his hands. "I can forgive the wound," she said, "but I will not return to the knife." The porch light shone between them, gentle and final. Grant closed his hand around the ring, and for the first time since everything began, he walked away without asking her to follow. 1 year later, morning light entered the Brooks Center for Financial Dignity through tall front windows that faced a quiet Brooklyn street lined with sycamore trees, coffee shops, and brownstones with flower boxes on the steps. The building had once been an old accounting office with cracked tile floors and buzzing fluorescent lights, but Naomi had turned it into something warm without making it soft. The walls were painted cream. The chairs were comfortable but practical. The reception desk held fresh flowers from Evelyn's garden, and beside the entrance stood a simple brass sign that read, "Your name belongs to you." Inside, women sat with legal advocates, financial counselors, and volunteers who spoke gently without treating anyone as fragile. A young mother learned how to open a separate bank account. A retired teacher reviewed documents she had been too afraid to question. A college student whispered that she did not know where to begin, and Naomi sat beside her, not across from her, and said, "Then we begin with 1 page." The center was not grand in the way Grant's world had been grand. There were no chandeliers, no marble floors, no photographers waiting for the right angle. But every room carried a dignity that money alone could not buy. It carried the sound of people being believed. Naomi moved through the morning in a navy dress and low heels, her curls pinned loosely at the back of her neck, Evelyn's silver bracelet resting against her wrist. She had become known across New York not as the woman a billionaire betrayed, but as the woman who built a door for others after finding her own locked. She still had difficult days. Healing had not arrived like a movie ending, clean and immediate. Some mornings, an old memory could cross her mind without warning. Grant laughing over burnt toast, Grant adjusting her necklace before a gala, Grant saying her name as if it were home. But memories no longer ruled her. They visited. They bowed. They left. Near noon, Marcus Reed stopped by with a folder and 2 cups of coffee. "The annual report is clean," he said, placing the folder on her desk. "Every dollar accounted for. Every program funded. And there is one more thing." Naomi looked up. "What thing?" Marcus hesitated, then slid a donation notice across the desk. It was anonymous, though not truly. The amount was too precise, the routing too familiar, the note too simple, for the women who deserve better systems than the ones I helped break. Naomi read it once, then again. Grant. She could feel his name without seeing it. For a moment, the old ache stirred, not sharp anymore, only human. Marcus watched her carefully. "We can return it." Naomi looked through the glass wall of her office at the waiting room, where a woman in a gray coat was filling out. an intake form with trembling hands while a volunteer sat beside her. She thought about pride, forgiveness, accountability, and the difference between letting someone buy absolution and letting repaired money do honest work. No, Naomi said at last. We will accept it. But it does not buy access. It does not buy a story. It does not buy me. Marcus smiled faintly. I will make sure the paperwork says exactly that. That evening, after the last client left and the lights were dimmed, Naomi stepped outside and locked the front door. Spring air carried the smell of rain and bakery bread from the corner. Across the street, Evelyn waited on the sidewalk with 2 paper bags of dinner, waving as if Naomi were still the little girl coming home from school. Naomi laughed, and the sound surprised her with its ease. Before crossing, she paused and looked back at the center's glowing windows. She thought of the receipt that had once fallen at her feet like a verdict. She thought of the ring she had returned, the red dress, the ballroom, the question that had tried to turn her pain into spectacle. And she thought of every woman who would walk through that door believing her life was over, only to discover that an ending could also be architecture. Naomi touched her mother's bracelet and smiled. A lie had broken her marriage, but it had not broken her. Betrayal had taken the life she knew, but truth had given her a life she could respect. And as the first stars appeared above Brooklyn, Naomi Brooks stepped off the curb and crossed the street toward home, carrying no bitterness, no borrowed name, and no need to be chosen by anyone who had failed to honor her. She had chosen herself, and from that choice, she had built something no lie could ever enter.